All told, the applications described in this section, if implemented as a single solution, would cost less than the $5 million figure cited by Medicine and Health. This is not a trivial amount of money, but it is minor compared with the amount most health organizations spend for paper-based transactions and standalone computer applications today. With paperwork making up to 20 to 30% of the $1 trillion plus per year revenues of the U.S. healthcare industry, the current overhead runs $200 to $300 billion annually, more than the gross national product of many countries. Today, the lack of information systems in doctors' offices represents the biggest obstacle to improving patient care. Only about 5% of physician practices in the United States use computer systems in their clinical work. Computerizing a doctor's office will cost from $10,000 to $50,000 for each one, but doctors can quickly recover the costs. A 5-physician clinic in Hammond, Louisiana, invested about $50,000 in PC patient systems that made data entry easy for doctors. The clinic saved $60,000 the first year in transcription costs alone. Change will be driven by two groups: knowledgeable patients who insist on more information and more involvement in their own health, and Internet-savvy health professionals who use these new tools to provide better care. Together they'll use a digital nervous system to turn the islands of healthcare into a single continent of integrated care. Take government to the people. Government, perhaps more than any other organization, can benefit from the efficiencies and improved service that stem from digital processes. Developed nations will lead the way, creating paperless processes to reduce bureaucracy. Developing nations will be able to provide new services without ever having to deal with cumbersome paper methods. Yet most governments are far behind business in using the tools of the digital age. Businesses going digital are stuck with many paper forms because governments are not yet online. The reason for this lag is not a lack of money so much as a lack of organizational focus. Because government processes are paper and people-intensive, streamlining in the past meant a reduction in service. It's not uncommon for legislatures to forbid agencies to close any offices, which simply forces them to struggle to do more with less. At the same time, there are few metrics to create economic or motivational incentives to provide better service. Citizens can't take their business to another tax agency or licensing bureau. Government agencies end up focused on their own internal organizational needs and narrow charter rather than the broad needs of citizens and businesses. As an example, consider the paperwork involved in hiring a home care provider in the United States. The employer has to know that 5 agencies are involved, each with its own set of forms. This complexity, more than a desire to avoid paying the taxes, explains why compliance with all the rules is low. In this and many other cases, government, to the average citizen or business, remains an intimidating knot of uncoordinated agencies and regulations. Yet digital processes and the web lifestyle give government the opportunity to reinvent itself around constituents rather than the bureaucracy. Governments can take 5 major steps to help make the digital age a reality in their countries. The first 2 involve improving government services. The last 3 involve creating an infrastructure so that a country's businesses can compete in the digital age. 1. Put government employees on email and eliminate paper filing. Make sure that all information being shared inside government is digital. 2. Put government services online with an interface designed for the user. Publish everything on the Internet. 3. Attract investment by technology companies and encourage electronic commerce, sometimes with financial incentives but more often with cooperative projects. Create a framework for electronic authentication of businesses and citizens. 4. Deregulate telecommunications and encourage major investments in the telecommunications infrastructure. 5. lift the skills of citizens by using technology as part of education and training systems at all levels. Just as businesses can make better use of productivity tools and email to get far more benefits from technology investments, so too can government. In developed nations, many government employees and public officials already have PCs on their desks, and developing nations can put in a PC infrastructure for a modest cost. The use of email alone promotes intra-agency cooperation and enables public officials to be more responsive. Some U.S. legislators are beginning to use email to stay in touch with constituents, for instance, and Australia's national parliament is using digital workflow to ensure follow-up on inquiries from constituents. Governments need to establish policies to use digital information flow in place of paper. Internet publishing should become the default. Printed documents should be the exception, not the rule. The savings would be immense. The U.S. government alone spends $1 billion annually printing documents that are already available on the web. Most copies of these documents, 30 million copies of the Federal Register, 1 million copies of hearings reports, and 65,000 copies of the President's budget, are for public officials whose offices are already online. Most of the printed copies end up in trash bins in the nation's capital. The U.S. federal rules for hiring and firing employees weigh 1,080 pounds in printed form, and military sugar cookies demand a 15-page description. Web publishing of all government manuals can reduce costs and make information far more accessible. Digital systems are also better for complex specifications. The government bid requirements for a cargo plane weigh 3.5 tons in printed form, but the data would easily fit on a couple of CDs. An online approach does more than simply reduce paper expenses. Web technology makes it possible for governments to provide a single point of contact for the public, a single online face to structure information according to what is important to the citizen. In several Swedish municipalities, for instance, web pages organize a variety of related services from various levels of government. Citizens can quickly locate tax authorities, national insurance offices, and passport bureaus. They can access minutes from public meetings and other public documents. They can even get real-time commuting schedules based on sensors in transit vehicles, either via the Internet or kiosks. A kiosk is just a PC designed for public use. In the United States, the state of Ohio provides one place on the web for people to see all open jobs in either the public or the private sectors. Australia's state of Victoria is taking such a one-stop shopping approach with its Maxi online system. Maxi is organized around life events that change a person's legal status or impose a reporting requirement: marriage, becoming of legal age, moving. If you change residence, for example, you fill out the change information once from a PC or a public kiosk. The web application automatically updates the records of the 4 state agencies that need to know. Citizens have to know only what they want to do, not the locations and procedures of different agencies. Maxi is handling 20,000 transactions a month and rising. Providing access to every citizen. As the Internet provides the best way to interact with government, all citizens need access even if they don't have PCs themselves. Electronic kiosks that function like bank ATM machines will ensure that every citizen can participate equally in the new way of working with government. Placed in post offices, libraries, schools, and other public buildings, kiosks can help governments improve services while trimming the cost of delivery. The national government of Australia, for instance, has replaced its system of index cards on bulletin boards with digital kiosks that display job postings. In addition to providing more complete and updated information, kiosks enable the government to provide unemployment services quickly in an area with a sudden loss of jobs, say if a plant closes, without the time required to set up a full office. Online systems accessible by kiosk or PC are most useful for citizens and cost-effective for government when they're multi-purpose. Governments should review all the transactions that require citizens to stand in line or fill out forms, name, address, ID number. Government should bring together the agencies involved to develop a single system for handling all the transactions. The Irish government, using An Post, the Irish Postal Service, has done this best. An Post kiosks process utility payments, issue passports, issue licenses for vehicles, disperse entitlement payments, offer savings and investment plans, sell lottery tickets from a kiosk system, even sell stamps. Each kiosk is a mini-city hall, covering the work of half a dozen bureaus. With many of the 1,000 An Post sites in remote towns having fewer than 2,000 residents, the kiosks serve 1.26 million people each week, half the Irish population, and handle more than $9 billion in transactions each year. Updating or adding new applications is very easy. Authentication of the user is important. You don't want an imposter getting into your government records any more than you'd want an unauthorized person to see your bank account. The need for authentication is why today governments that do online transactions usually limit them to transactions where impersonation would not be a problem, such as renewals of licenses or an automobile registration or the payment of taxes and fines. I don't think people would object if someone pretended to be them to pay their traffic tickets. If someone could impersonate you and see your tax return or vote, though, the public would be in an uproar. Smart cards, which users can swipe on a PC or at a kiosk, are a solution to identity problems, as with an ATM card for a cash machine. Smart cards combined with a personal identification number, PIN, or similar password, and in some cases thumbprints or voice prints, will securely identify users trying to access personal information about benefits, taxes, or payment histories, or to initiate a transaction. In Spain, a new kiosk system will let anyone find out general information about social benefits by going through a touch-screen menu, but the person needs a smart card to access any personal information such as pension amount and status. Though such cards are the equivalent of bank cards used around the world, some people are concerned that the government might collect too much information about citizens. Some nations have privacy laws that prevent a single card or database from containing all information about a citizen, and it is likely that in some nations, two types of smart cards will emerge, one for financial transactions with business or government, and another for health care. Each country will have to decide on the kinds of personal information that will be allowed on smart cards. Even if their use is restricted to identification only, the streamlining of process and elimination of fraud is well worth the investment. Combined with back-end business systems that immediately post welfare or other payments directly to a central accounts database, smart cards make it very difficult to make fraudulent or duplicate claims. In London, 200 trial kiosks of a system like An Post's are credited with reducing welfare payment fraud by £750,000 in the first year. When deployed at all 1,500 post offices, the kiosks are expected to save £150 million per year. As governments embrace digital systems, software will streamline processes by having special workflow logic for key functions. Software solutions for the legislative, judicial, and executive branches of any government have recently been created. Legislatures in several U.S. states are using electronic systems to manage the process for drafting laws. Such systems can eliminate the $3 to $5 million that most states spend every 2 years on printing for bill drafting and revision. PC-based systems can manage the process electronically, can more easily track conflicts within a bill, among multiple bills, or with existing laws or sections of the state or national constitution, and can provide an audit trail of every change to ensure that the final law that is passed is word for word what the legislature intended. These systems make it easy to update web pages, which several states are using to keep the public informed of the status of legislation and committee meetings. For the judiciary, PC workflow systems are enabling courts in the United States and Canada to begin electronic case filings to handle the 500,000 documents per year on the docket of a typical county court. Some U.S. state and federal agencies use digital workflow to manage the scheduling for lawyers and law enforcement officers for court. By reducing the time police spend in court waiting for cases to be called, the application gives police more time on the street. The executive branch of government can benefit as well from software that solves unique government problems. Florida, for instance, requires state agencies to lease space from the state if any state-owned property is available. Florida agencies can go online to specify the amount of space they need and the location, for example 5,000 square feet in Miami, and see what is available. The Florida Health Department uses PCs to allocate and reconcile costs such as building leases and staff time among programs funded by different grants or tax allocations. The system electronically matches bills against program accounts and highlights any discrepancies. The department can reconcile its monthly expenses in a few hours instead of 3 to 4 weeks of manual reconciliation, and different counties and internal departments get a single bill covering multiple programs. The state government of South Australia used to publish 5,000 copies a week of its 50-page government listing of job vacancies. Formal publication was delayed until the booklet could be physically printed and distributed to several hundred remote state offices. Closing dates were held up to ensure enough time for remote applicants to reply by paper. Today, a Microsoft Exchange-based workflow application manages the entire process. Job openings first go via email to legal reviewers and several dozen human resources managers from various agencies who have first shot at filling any openings. If an HR manager puts a hold on the opening for a state employee who wants to transfer, the hiring manager is automatically notified by email so that no one wastes time applying. Remote sites get the listing electronically. If the posting is not filled internally and moves on to a public announcement, the hiring manager receives email describing the newspapers and dates in which the position will be advertised. Though the state expects to save between 50 and 80% of the annual $350,000 Australian dollars in production costs with the new system, the main benefit is the speed with which the state can fill jobs while maintaining equal opportunity for people in remote offices. Another example in the United States is Massachusetts' online bidding process. Massachusetts publishes all the state bids, all the documents needed for vendors to respond, and the results of all the bids online. Massachusetts' online procurement system not only handles the entire bidding process less expensively, it also helps other public entities buy goods for less. In most states, the cities, towns, and school districts, by law, can get the same low prices from vendors that the state gets. In a paper world, though, it's virtually impossible to find the state's price on most goods. Now, a city or school district can quickly find out the state's best price on the Massachusetts website. Less developed countries may assume that a digital approach to government is out of reach, but countries without systems can start fresh with new technology, which will be less expensive than manual approaches. Developed countries have older systems that often must be integrated to manage a transition. Leadership examples around the world make it clear that much of the innovation is happening in smaller governments, smaller nations and municipalities, counties and provinces, and the state levels of larger nations. Smaller governments, being less fragmented and less complex, can experiment and deploy solutions on a smaller scale. For larger governments, the lesson is to pilot smaller projects to develop expertise and evaluate citizen response. Put the initial focus on projects that directly touch citizens, and particularly ones that eliminate organizational complexity for the public. Governments should invest in training managers on business process re-engineering, as several governments have done, to help stimulate consolidated online approaches. Competitive grants can spur projects to streamline internal processes and improve service delivery. Florida has different agencies compete for a limited number of innovative technology projects, bringing an entrepreneurial spirit to play in budget requests. The state balances such investments with a policy of providing some IT services from its central department only to agencies that fund them out of transaction fees or monthly subscriptions. This pay-as-you-go strategy ensures that the state is using its IT dollars for projects that other agencies really want and that have solid cost efficiencies. Cumulative savings from new digital systems would represent a substantial portion of every government's budget. The Pentagon recently found that it was spending more money to process and approve travel vouchers, $2.3 billion, than it was spending on travel itself, $2 billion. For a reasonable and largely one-time investment, an online expense system would free up billions of dollars in costs every year. A billion here, a billion there, pretty soon you're talking real money, as Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois used to say of federal spending. Billions would go a long way against a U.S. budget that annually allocates $27 billion for food stamps, $25 billion for welfare, and $13 billion for public housing. These programs all have enormously expensive paper-based administrative systems that easily consume 30% of the funding. Properly deployed digital systems could drive the overhead below 10%. Citizens, becoming more aware of the power of the web, are no longer willing to accept the idea that government service should be slow or confusing. No consumer would stand in line for 2 hours to get service from private enterprise. Why should a plumber stand in line for 2 hours at a government office and lose 2 hours of pay, when, by using the Internet, he could get his license or pay his fees in a few minutes and be at work on time? Deregulation of telecommunications is probably the single greatest step that a country can take to create a digital economy. Replacing telecommunications monopolies with open competition around the world will stimulate innovation in Internet service delivery and will reduce rates, which are high and discourage use in many countries. If a government has policies that are Internet-friendly and invests in a high-tech culture, the benefits can be considerable. Costa Rica followed such a course and won a regional competition for an Intel chip fabrication plant. In the first full year of operation, the plant produced $700 million in export revenues, more than either bananas or coffee, the country's largest agricultural crops. Building an information economy will make all the companies in the country more competitive. The information age benefits from having more participants. As more and more countries join in, the importance increases for all countries. World trade will be done digitally. No government can put a fully digital approach in place immediately, but every government can begin now with strong first steps that benefit citizens and make them feel that the government is working for them. The practical guiding principle should be that citizens should never again have to fill out multiple forms or go multiple places to get information. As one government official said in conversation about his new website, which lets people access 100 years of county records online, people can tell when you're trying to help. They know the difference between a government agency trying to help them and one that's just getting in the way. When reflex is a matter of life and death. A victory for technology. That's how most people remember the Gulf War of 1991. Cruise missiles hugged the terrain over hundreds of miles to hit heavily fortified targets, and radar-evading stealth fighters dropped smart bombs on communications centers and bridges. For 38 days during Operation Desert Storm, the U.S. military and its allies controlled the air. Flying 2,500 sorties a day with minimal losses, Allied air forces set up the Left Hook ground assault that drove Iraq from Kuwait and ended the war after just 100 hours of ground operations. The high-tech aircraft of the Gulf War had decidedly low-tech mission support, though. In the Persian Gulf, mission orders were written up on an old-fashioned grease board just as they had been for every air war in the past. Squadron commanders had to manually track which pilots had flown what missions and who was available to fly next. Pilots got face-to-face threat briefings on target locations, the best routes in and out, locations of enemy troops, and the possibility of surface-to-air missiles, ground fire, and other contingencies. Then they retreated for a minimum of 3 hours and usually 7 or 8 hours of mission planning. They'd look up relevant maps in a file cabinet and photocopy and tape maps together. Then they'd walk out distances with a protractor, draw in the route and danger levels with colored pencils, study photos, transcribe intelligence data onto the maps, and calculate the elevations of obstacles. Only after completing this paperwork did pilots go out to fly their dangerous missions. After the Gulf War, the U.S. Air Force, like all the services, held a Lessons Learned conference. High on the Air Force list for running a future high-intensity air war was better flight planning for pilots flying into harm's way. While some active-duty Air Force personnel wanted to address this need with the military's traditional computer systems, members of the U.S. Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard, who had civilian experience, immediately said, "We gotta do this on a PC." The reservists turned to a number of commercial software developers as well as to the Georgia Institute of Technology, whose researchers were already experienced with the mathematical models and geographic data sources required to a sophisticated mapping system. The result was Falcon View, a PC-based mission planning system developed in 18 months for about $2.5 million. Falcon View cuts the old manual mission planning process for a standard sortie from upward of 7 hours to less than 20 minutes. It increases planning accuracy through the use of precise digital data and aeronautical mapping tools. And it's affordable enough and easy enough to use that the Air Force has deployed it worldwide. Falcon View became so popular with pilots that they began to ask for additional capabilities. Their requests led the Air Force to embark on a program called Cyber Warrior to bring information technology to all phases of pilot and aircraft deployment, from scheduling to intelligence dissemination to debriefing. The service quickly developed an intelligent scheduling system that tracks pilot assignments, training levels, availability, and special information such as whether a pilot needs to log a night mission to satisfy training requirements. A commander can do a quick search to find candidates for upcoming missions, and pilots can dial in on laptop computers to see when they're scheduled to fly. A PC-based debriefing system helps squadrons reconstruct missions to improve planning for the next mission. Instead of sitting down with a paper map and a set of colored pencils, a pilot today sits down with a laptop computer containing digital maps of the world, digital images and updates from military intelligence, and an electronic drawing kit customized for military aviators. The pilot can immediately locate landmarks such as bridges or rivers, plot his route, check safety parameters, check weapons systems information and weapons loads, link to a web-based weather source, and prepare flight maps and plans. Before he flies the mission, the pilot can study mountainous areas or cities to preview what he'll see in the air and get a good idea of the deployment of hostile forces. If a pilot wants to know the elevation of a mountain, he simply clicks on it on his digital map and sees a precise latitude, longitude, and altitude reading, information a pilot used to have to dig up from paper charts. Fighter pilots load the Falcon View pre-mission planning files into the aircraft's computers for use in flight. In addition to providing routine aviation data such as fuel consumption and takeoff and landing information, Falcon View has a number of specialized features for military aviation. Falcon View data is used in onboard weapons systems for computerized targeting and for checking weapons fusing, whether a bomb is set to explode on the ground or 20 feet in the air. Falcon View does drop calculations that take into account the altitude and speed of the plane, the speed and direction of the wind, even the changing weight and balance of an aircraft before and after dropping its payload. Falcon View can mean the difference between a successful mission and an impossible one. During a tour to the Bosnia theater, the pilot took his copy of Falcon View along with him to a base in Italy that didn't have access to the software yet. NATO forces had been looking for a particular bridge in Bosnia for 3 days and couldn't find it on their maps or from the air. The pilot fired up Falcon View and located the bridge immediately. They blew it up that afternoon. Falcon View displays satellite imagery accurate to within 5 meters, at the 10-meter resolution of the older meters. At the 10-meter resolution of the older system, the bridge wasn't visible. During the Gulf War, the Air Force sometimes had to send 10 to 12 F-16s to hit a single target. With the higher levels of accuracy provided by Falcon View, the Air Force can now send fewer planes to a target. The goal is for one airplane to hit one target. The greater degree of accuracy from Falcon View will enable newer aircraft, such as the B-2 bomber, to attack as many as 16 targets on a single mission, a capability that adds up to big savings in lives and money. The American people are not willing to accept a single casualty, says the lieutenant colonel in charge of the Falcon View project. So every little bit of increased accuracy and certainty we can demonstrate is worth a lot. Useful as Falcon View is, a fighter pilot can't carry a laptop in flight. It might not stay in his lap while he's pulling reverse Gs. As the Air Force upgrades the avionics computers in its fighter aircraft, though, and as new generation fighter aircraft join the fleet, Falcon View will become fully integrated into cockpit systems and visual displays. Newer planes will have real-time moving map displays tied to GPS systems, global positioning satellites, that show a plane's precise location and its position relative to other friendly air and ground forces. Real-time data links will keep Falcon View updated with the latest intelligence feeds coming in via satellite from command and control. Updated photographs, maps, and other relevant data will enable a pilot to make last-minute corrections. If enemy ground troops move from one side of a ridge to another while the pilot is en route, late-breaking intelligence will give the pilot a chance to change his flight path, either to attack those troops or to avoid ground fire on his way to another target. Airlift crews already have Falcon View's in-flight capability. A crew plugs a laptop into the transport plane's onboard systems, connecting its PC with a live data link to systems on the ground and to other planes. Crews can replan missions, drop zones, and rendezvous points in flight, and receive tactical information such as radar readings from other aircraft. Rescue aircraft can get precise range and bearing information on downed aviators. For cargo aircraft carrying food and supplies to civilian populations, in such places as Haiti, Somalia, Bosnia, and northern Iraq, Falcon View provides drop zone overlays and calculates wind effects for the loadmaster, ready to push cargo pallets out the back of the aircraft. After Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown and 34 other people died in the 1996 Croatian plane crash caused by navigational difficulties, deployment of Falcon View became mandatory on all Air Force Distinguished Visitor aircraft, including the President's. By an eerie coincidence, Ron Brown's widow, Alma Brown, was one of several dignitaries who accompanied President Clinton on his trip to Africa in 1998, and was on an Air Force plane that developed engine trouble. In Africa, runways long enough to handle heavy jets are few and far between. Falcon View immediately identified the closest suitable airport and navigated the plane to a safe landing. Another exciting aspect of a digital military is its ability to dramatically increase rates of learning. Instead of having to fight 3 wars and lose hundreds of planes and thousands of men to learn which procedures and tactics work, the Air Force can now examine the records of a few missions and learn the same kinds of lessons a lot sooner. In earlier air wars, including the Gulf War, debriefing was often inconclusive. Combatants in debriefing sessions tended to remember the action through only their narrow views of the situation, and their recollections were usually blurred by the fog of battle. It was hard for commanders to reconstruct the overall scene in order to understand how to improve next time. In today's debriefing sessions, pilots and commanders pore over the Falcon View digital flight plan data and compare it with video footage taken from each aircraft during a mission. A debriefing session might involve the flight plans, 4 videotapes, and a PC-based debriefing system. The crew can replay an entire mission and see who shot when, whether a bomb was dropped too early or too late, whose plane was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and whose unorthodox but brilliant maneuver saved the day. Falcon View's ability to track, record, and replay mission data is helping the Air Force develop better flight plans and pilot tactics for greater pilot safety and military capability. A rule of thumb in military flying is that if you can successfully complete your first 10 combat missions, you can successfully complete your next 100. An awful lot of pilots were shot down in Vietnam during the first 10 missions. With the ability to capture and replay missions, pilots can make their mistakes rehearsing those 10 missions on the ground in front of a PC, and then fly those first 10 missions in training rather than in combat, where the consequences of failure are deadly. It's flight simulation taken to a new level. The next big step will be digitally linking pilots with the U.S. Air Force's command and control structures at the higher decision-making echelons. Speed is of the essence in the chain of command. Disseminating orders fast can save a lot of lives. Consider a mission that involves getting a fighter or a bomber to a location 8 hours away. With the new capabilities, you could get the plane in the air and develop intelligence and target plans while the plane was en route. Up-to-date information would be ready for the pilot on his aircraft display as he approached the target. You would get at least an 8-hour jump on mission execution. As the Gulf War demonstrated, timely mission success in the air can make an enormous difference to troops on the ground. The Air Force calls this type of air support the gift of time, allowing ground commanders to pick and choose when and where to best deploy the ground assault. Many projects are also in progress to streamline military business systems. The Defense Department has identified the 240 offices that handle 80% of the department's contracts, and has already achieved a paperless contracting environment in more than half of them. As one admiral put it, the United States can use technology to hit a target with a cruise missile from 1,000 miles away. It's about time the United States uses technology to pay the supplier across the street. The new digital systems used by the U.S. Air Force aren't isolated projects, but part of an overall goal by the Pentagon to ensure that U.S. military forces have fast and affordable access to the world's best technology while making better use of taxpayer dollars. For more than 30 years, research and development in the commercial sector has outstripped R&D in the military. In the mid-1990s, the military began to move away from a reliance on its own specially developed systems to take advantage of the industrial world. The Pentagon embarked on a dual-use strategy to get military as well as civilian use out of the same technology base. The dual-use strategy has 3 pillars: investing in civilian technologies critical to military applications, manufacturing commercial and military items on the same low-cost production lines, and inserting commercial components into military systems. The historic 10-year procurement cycles of military applications collide with Moore's Law and the doubling of PC computing power every 2 years. After seeing the effectiveness of high-tech weapons, who wants to go into battle with technology that's several generations out of date? The best weapons result from the shortest deployment cycles. The same lesson applies equally well to business use of technology. Location-fixing technology using GPS is fairly specialized today, but will become mainstream. Ports and transportation carriers have a need to know where their equipment and personnel are, just as the military does. Today, most logistics solutions are highly specialized, costing tens of millions of dollars and preventing all but the largest organizations from being able to use digital systems to manage the flow of materiel. PC economics will bring costs down rapidly. It will be inexpensive to put a GPS tracker on a container or any piece of equipment to always know exactly where it is. Non-industrial uses of sensing devices are quite innovative. Irrigation wheel lines on farms now come with sensors that beep your pager or send you email if the system breaks down. Farmers around the world are using PC-based GPS systems and satellite sensors to detect differences in soil moisture, fertility, drainage, and other variables. With data downloaded directly to their rigs, farmers can alter the amount of seed or fertilizer in order to maximize yields. Or they can analyze this data's yields. Or they can analyze this data over several years to find patterns that enable them to make better decisions about how to farm the land. Tiny chips embedded under the skin of cattle will soon be able to not just track the location of livestock, but manage their health. The sensors will trigger personalized feed troughs so that each animal gets exactly the right feed for her age and condition. To me, it's amazing to realize that the PC has become so flexible and rugged that it's ubiquitous. Whether they're serving the interests of economic competition in a business setting or military objectives in battle, information applications on the PC enable an organization to empower its workers. In the case of the military, empowerment is a matter of life and death. Create connected learning communities. PCs can empower teachers and students more than any other group of knowledge workers. As I mentioned in describing the web lifestyle, students are the ultimate knowledge workers, since learning is all about acquiring knowledge. Teachers will be able to use the Internet to share with each other and to allow students to explore a subject in new ways. PCs can be a catalyst for reaching the educational goals that parents, educators, and government have set forth, such as collaborative learning, critical thinking, and lifelong learning skills. With a solid infrastructure in place, some schools are already benefiting from incorporating PCs in the classroom. Even as most schools struggle to find the resources for these new tools, innovative programs have shown that there is a payoff for the effort. The success of PCs as educational tools requires teacher involvement. Without teacher training and integration into the curriculum, PCs will not have a big impact. Many PCs have gone into computer labs where they sit seldom used. Schools need to shift from treating the PC as a subject unto itself, teaching about technology, to integrating the PC throughout the curriculum, teaching with technology. More and more school districts are now demonstrating that with the involvement of teachers, PCs used as learning tools can have a profound effect. In the Western Heights Independent School District, just west of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, teachers surprised administrators with their enthusiasm when the district provided training the summer before it rolled out PCs. More than 200 of its 230 teachers signed up, causing the district to scramble to schedule enough sessions to handle the demand. Most teachers have a great love of learning, and they'll get excited about anything that will help kids learn. What teachers don't want is to be thrown into something they have not had the opportunity to learn about and become comfortable with. Western Heights is a small 7-school district with a moderate industrial tax base. The student population is a multicultural mix of white, black, Native American, Hispanic, and Asian descent. About 65% of the kids qualify for free or reduced-cost lunches in the school lunch program. This is not the school district that you might expect to lead the charge into the information age. Yet, in the last 3 years, the district has overwhelmingly voted 3 times to spend a total of more than $6.8 million in local funds to create perhaps the leading technology-driven curriculum in the country. The community sees the investment as the only way to break the cycle of poverty that could repeat with its children if they go unprepared into the digital world. A PC can be a powerful new teaching tool for teachers coming from the world of blackboards and chalk. Using PowerPoint, for instance, teachers find they can spark kids' interest in the subject by including photos, film clips, and links to Internet pages. One civics teacher at Western Heights starts his class each day with fresh news from the Internet. First is a science photo of the day from a NASA web page, then news clips from abcnews.com, Then a story that leads into his curriculum topic, which could be campaign finance reform or government checks and balances. PCs are part of each teacher's life in class at Western Heights, not something outside. Teachers use email to communicate with each other about common issues. They don't have to wait for the district meetings that occur a couple of times a year. They can reach out to a colleague with a question and get an answer back quickly. This collaboration occurs among teachers in each grade level, or among teachers coordinating curricula across grade levels, in disciplines such as science, math, and language. Computers are allowing teachers to more easily reach out beyond the confines of their classrooms and interact with their peers. Western Heights' PC-based network runs on 17 miles of fiber-optic cable among the schools and administration building. Each of the 230 classrooms has at least 2 PCs on the network, one for the teacher, the other for kids to use. Each room is wired for another 3 PCs to be on the network, and each school has a computer lab. A huge monitor in each classroom enables teachers to display material off the Internet, or films from a central video server, or presentations from another classroom. University of Oklahoma instructors have taught classes remotely. The meteorologist from the local TV station has taught classes about tornadoes and other weather topics, and students have broadcast weather reports back for public broadcast. Dayton Tire, the area's major employer, has participated in video conference sessions on topics such as job interviewing skills and chemical engineering. The TV station and the local tire plant were included in the district's fiber optic system for just this kind of community involvement in teaching. The university connects through Oklahoma's high-speed education network. Students have used the video conferencing system to take virtual field trips to the East Coast, to England, and to other places in Europe, visiting museums and studying with sister schools. Students throughout the district watched the Space Shuttle launch with John Glenn in late 1998 live over their PCs. Several classrooms are set up specifically for distance learning via PC-based TV. These setups have enabled Western Heights to add advanced math classes in its middle school by TV instruction from the high school. It's not a perfect solution, but it's better than no advanced math class. Teachers have benefited from a video conference course through the University of Kansas to help them enhance class content and curriculum with new technologies. Distance learning has also enabled students at home with injury or illness to keep up with their classes. One teenager was home for months with injuries he sustained protecting his mother from a gunman. Previously, the school would have sent out a home teacher 3 times a week for an hour a day. The home teacher would pick up homework, hand off more assignments, and answer a few questions. This time around, Western Heights put a PC, camera, and monitor in the student's bedroom and set up a high-speed link to his home. Not knowing how well the interactive link was going to work, the school began by connecting him with only one class, but his classmates complained loudly when he wasn't there at their next class. The school immediately extended the televised sessions to include all his courses. Biology class was probably the most interesting for him since the other kids were always sure to hold the really gross dissections up close to the camera, play similar pranks, and otherwise make him feel like part of the group. This home PC link was cheaper than a home teacher, and the student learned far more. He kept up with his work and grades, but more important, he was never lost as a member of the class. Another school making similar investments in the future is Reading's Highdown School, a publicly funded state school in a town of 140,000 people west of London. Highdown is in the heart of the UK's Silicon Valley. A large number of the country's high-tech firms are located within 20 miles. Highdown's proposal to create a connected learning community became one of 23 trials accepted as part of the UK government's high-tech superhighways initiative. Highdown decided to make technology a central part of the educational experience, to connect the entire community with the school, including museums, libraries, and government offices. Educators wanted a sustainable model so that the approach would not fall by the wayside after the initial enthusiasm waned. They wanted to raise educational performance standards and motivate lifelong learning. Highdown's network connects more than 100 PCs in the school with interactive CDs and filtered content from the Internet. As Highdown moves from trial to a long-term program, the local council has joined in to help expand the network to all 46 schools in the borough. Students have individual computer accounts so they can access productivity applications, email, and the Internet from home. Parental involvement has been instrumental in the success of the program. 30 parents participated in the initial development and were able to routinely log in from home to check the school's intranet